Alright friends, welcome back to my channel. As you guys can tell by this massive stack of books here, we are doing my February reading wrap up. If you guys are new here, I did 29 books in 29 days in the month of February, and because I'm an overachiever, I actually read 30. I have the order I read them in, but I don't know if I want to do that order, just kind of grab and go, because there's a lot of books in front of me right now. You know what? We're gonna go in order, but put the series together for everybody's sake here. I finally read the first two books in the Addicted series by Kristen and Becca Ritchie. This was originally, I think, like two separate series. It was like Addicted and then Sisters Calloway, but now it's like all one big one of just 10 books. 10 books. Did I buy the first 7 without reading any of them? Correct, but now I've read at least 2, so I'm doing good. I gave Addicted to You a 3.75, and being 100% honest, the first half, like, it was definitely harder for me to read. I think just, like, reading about addiction is like a very uncomfortable topic until you get comfortable, if that makes sense. Beginning I think was like a 3 to 3.5 star, but then by the end, those last like 50 pages I loved. I think it was up to 3.75, and then we had Ricochet. This one's like a shorty. This is like 250 pages max, I think. It's small because I felt like I couldn't rate it too high, because if I'm being 100% honest, like not a whole lot happened. I did appreciate though how in this one the two main characters are separated for the whole duration of the book, and they're like working on their addictions separately instead of like enabling each other, which is a great time. But so I read these two. I'm excited to continue on with the series, but 2 done for now. And then I read The Maidens. This was actually me giving this author a second chance because I'd read The Silent Patient, and not that I didn't like it, just I found it a bit predictable, which is kind of ironic because everybody says how unpredictable it is. But within the first, I say like 50 or so pages, I guessed like a huge aspect of the ending that kind of ruined that book for me. And then unfortunately the same thing happened here. I have a video of me on my phone in like the first, I think it was like 20 pages, and like, hey, I'm 2 chapters in, this is whodunit. And I was right. So I didn't really fully guess like why or like how exactly went down, but just like having like a big aspect ruined for you early on definitely makes the ending a little bit less anticlimactic. But I think I gave this one overall still a 4 star because I actually really enjoyed the storyline it followed, and I liked how it ended off, but still was a little bit too predictable for my liking. Now, complete opposite side of the spectrum with an ending I did not guess whatsoever was The Prison Healer. This one I gave a 4.5 star. I did not see the ending coming whatsoever, and I felt like I knew there was a huge plot twist in this book that got everybody by surprise. I'd heard that a million times over, but then there was a plot twist that kind of happened with like 100 or so pages left that I did see coming. I thought that was the big one. And I was like, okay, this happened again. And then she literally kept you looking every single different direction, as every other page was like a mini plot twist that kept happening. And I feel like that's how she got you at the end, because you were just so distracted the entire time that you totally missed the entire point. How this book ended was crazy, enough to the point where I literally ran to Amazon and bought the next books directly afterwards. So now I have the other 2. I haven't read it yet, but the second book is on my TBR for March. Also, sidebar before we get into this, I'm actually so proud of myself because of the 30 books I read this month, 28 were physical books that I owned. That's amazing. The whole point of this challenge was to read as many books as I could off my physical TBR so that I could lower it before I dove into a bunch of these massive series I wanted to get into. And so I think it's safe to say that we accomplished that. One of the only 2 books I read on e-reader was actually The Vanishing Half, and this one I gave a 3.25 star. The main issue with this book is that I enjoyed it while reading it, but I cannot tell you like anything that happened now. I honestly don't remember much of it. It kind of just like, it was a book that I read, and then the next day like it was kind of gone, you know? Then I just completely finished off the Edens and read the last 4 books I had in the series still. Granted Plus is a 4 star. I did enjoy this one. This one was between Talia, who's like the doctor in the family, and her like ex-man Foster, who comes back to grovel, which I really enjoyed. Jasper Vale is about Eloise and Jasper. Eloise is the sister who pretty much like runs the hotel. And my one main like problem with this book is, tell me why every book in the series is named after a place. Okay, Crimson River, Sable Peak, Indigo Ridge. Jasper Vale is just the guy's name. Where did we lose the plot? This makes me mad. Crimson River is the 5th book. It was actually my favorite book in the entire series. One thing I always say about the series, I love how it's like small town romance. There's some like some mystery elements mixed in there with it that make it a really fun read. This one, the mystery happened right off the bat, and I felt like I was reading an episode of Criminal Minds, and I loved it. This is about Lila and then Vance, who's pretty much like they're like undercover to investigate a case, sort of. You'll see. And then Sable Peak is Mateo's book, The Youngest Brother, and I've wanted a story for a long time, and I didn't know who the female main character in this was until I started reading it. It's a character that we met in Crimson River who I absolutely loved, and so when I saw her in this, I was like, I'm sold. Excellent. This one was a 4.25, so a little bit less than Crimson River, but I still just loved this one. I think Tiffany Perry is definitely one of those authors that I kind of just pick up when I want something quick, easy, almost like a palette cleanser between all my big reads. So definitely a big fan. Then I read Love Redesign. This is about Julian and Dahlia, and I did enjoy this one. What's hilarious is that there is some references to the Kane brothers in this one from the Dreamland Billionaire series. So as I was reading this and I was seeing those kind of like little glimpses of the brothers from the Dreamland Billionaire series, it hit me that I have not read the last book yet. Literally, I was like, oh, you're right, I didn't read. It's fine. This one I did enjoy, but I will say, probably like this whole chunk, every other chapter, just spice. For some people, that's like amazing. Me, I prefer more of like sprinklings. You know, my stories, not like the entire thing. So I'm not gonna lie, I definitely skimmed a lot of that middle section because I was like, okay. Then I read the third book in the Golden Ranch series by Elsie Silver, The Frontrunner. This is about Stefan and Mira. I gave this one a 4.25 star. I really loved it. The one thing I will say is that the ending was very dramatic, which like we can appreciate. I feel like some of those endings that kind of resolved everything really quickly and kind of like wrapped up too nicely with a little bow. It most definitely was not an easy out because of what took place, but kind of felt like an easy out for the characters and their situation. Does that make sense? I don't know. Either way, this one's a 4.25. I just have the last book in the series to read, and it is on my March TBR, so I'm very excited. Then I read Wreck by Lauren Asher. This is the third book in the Dirty Air series, and this was a 4.75 star. I did not think I was gonna like this as much as I did, especially because the second book, Collided, was a 3-star for me. However, this one, I honestly think, okay, my little heart loves Chestnut Springs. I'm very biased towards it. I love Chestnut Springs. And this book gave flawless. We're seeing Jax and Elena, and pretty much Elena's kind of like hired to like go babysit him for the F1 season, like make sure he like behaves himself, doesn't get into any trouble. And it literally is like what happens in Flawless with Summer and Red. I will say I lost that like 0.25 star, I think, just because of the way the male main character handled the conflict. Now, that being said, I do think it was kind of valid. Like I understand how he thought it was okay in his head, but it wasn't, you know? They could have gone about it in a much more mature way. It's definitely my favorite now of the Dirty Air series, but I still have redeemed and it's on my March TBR to finish off that series, and apparently that's like the fan favorite, so I'm super excited to get into it. Now, perhaps my most disappointing read of the entire month, The Stranger Upstairs. I'll just say something real quick. Okay, this book, the setup, amazing. The way the story was going, great. The ending, ruined it. Honestly, I gave it 3 stars. I think that's quite generous. But honestly, I gave it that 3-star for the setup, for the vibes, for the ambiance. The ending made me so mad. You can get out. I, this whole time, was so excited. In my head, I was thinking about all these like amazing theories of what could have happened and like what's going on. And then the author's like, you know what? Let me think of one so lame that you couldn't even think about it because it's that lame, and then make that the ending. Bye. Where the Dark Side Soul was actually 3.5 for me. I got it as an early arc from Simon & Schuster. It is a YA fantasy, which I totally understand, but I did read a little bit young for like my personal preference, like where I'm at currently in my reading journey. But I will say in this, the characters are so lovable. The ending did have me crying, and that came out at the end of February. If you want to give it a read, I really, really enjoyed it. Letters to Sun was a 3.75 star. I did really enjoy this one, but the main thing that brought it down for me is that there was a very big like spiritual aspect to this book. There's definitely like a lot of like spiritual elements and like influence over this read, and I will say it's not my favorite thing to read when I'm reading a book, so that's why I brought it down like a little bit. But I did love the storyline. I just wish there was like, and I can't even say that 'cause like the spiritual element was such a huge part of it, but like, so I can't say I wish it wasn't there, but brought it down a little bit for me. We're gonna do these ones together because by the same author, but I read His and Hers and Sometimes I Lie by Alice Feeney. Alice Feeney is now 3 for 3 for getting me with her endings of like me not being able to guess how it's gonna end. His and Hers was a 4.5. My jaw was on the floor by this ending. I did not see it coming whatsoever. Sometimes I Lie was a 4-star because hear me out. The ending, I did not see coming again. Don't see it coming, but I feel like, me personally, I read this book during 24-hour readathon at like 1 o'clock in the morning. So there's a chance I missed some things. However, there was like a storyline this book followed, and now I think it was just to add kind of like an extra creepiness factor to the story. But I, however, felt that something that happened near the ending, which was very traumatic to also just read about, didn't really have a purpose. Like it happened, like very close to the ending, and it was like super traumatic, bad to read about, and then I just felt like it was for nothing. To me, it just kind of felt like unnecessary trauma, and also just like unnecessary to make the reader sit through and read when it was not even correlated to our end result. Unless it was and I missed something, but still, it was like a little too much for me. 5 stars. 5 stars. 5 stars. 5 5 stars. I love Kristen Hanna. This is about Frankie. She's a nurse who serves in Vietnam. I pretty much like her story when she's over there, how she's treated when she gets back, and kind of like how she's impacted after the war. It is beautifully devastating. There's some romance, some drama, some tea, if you will, and I really enjoyed this one. Powerless by Lauren Roberts is a 4.5 for me. I did like this one. My main like critique I'd say with this was that it was a dual POV romantasy, which is not the critique. I love a dual POV romantasy. But one thing I will say is that I kind of felt like the author at times was going back and forth, where we'd kind of have something like big and dramatic happen at the end of one character's point of view, and then when the next character's point of view started, she would backtrack and then say that same event again from their point of view, which I totally understand, like wanting to show the differences in like what was happening for each of them individually when that happened. However, I just feel like I kept like backtracking the entire book. Like I'd be super excited, momentum was built, and also be like, we'd go back and it'd fall a little bit, and then we'd keep going, you know? The Death of Vivek Ogi was a 3.25 star. The problem with this book is that look how short it is. It's such a beauty. It's a little short one. I loved it when I was reading it, okay? It touched on a bunch of like really important and sensitive topics, and then the author threw in I don't want to say trope, it shouldn't be a trope. They threw in a romance that shouldn't have been a romance in the slightest. It was upsetting. I was reading it, I was like, no. Ruined the entire book, in my opinion. Like literally without that one aspect, it'd probably been like at least a 4.25, 4.5, 3.25. 3.25. No. Canyon Moon is 3.75 star. This is like a really nice like multi-generational story where it's kind of like a daughter, mom, and grandma. The grandma has just passed and she left her house to her daughter and granddaughter, but they have like a very rocky relationship. Not a good one, if I'm being blank. And pretty much they move into this house together and like live together for a little bit while they kind of sort out all her affairs. And it's beautiful and I really enjoyed my time with it. Homefront is a 4.75 star. This is actually my first Kristen Hanna read that's not a 5 star. I'm almost kind of mad that I didn't rate a 5 star because I couldn't really figure out anything to not make it one. I feel like it was a 4.75. Like it just missed the mark. Tell me how I ordered this book off Amazon and I didn't even notice until I started reading it, and it's too late to return it now, that this page is literally just like ripped like wide, like open. Do y'all see that? Can you see that? It's just ripped. This is about a woman who like when she was 18, she was kind of like looking for family and like a sense of belonging, so she signed up for the army. And then pretty much like years and years later, she has her own kids, her own family, her own husband, and she was getting called to service, so she has to leave her family and go to Iraq. She has a tween daughter who really needs her at home and like a very rocky relationship with her husband at the time. So leaving is just awful for her, and it kind of tells her story, and it ripped my heart out. I sobbed like I always do with Kristen Hanna. I just love this woman. Then I wrote The Dead Romantics. This was a 3.75 star. I also, my main thing with this was that I liked it. I liked the characters, but I just found it so hard to root for it because like it's romance with a ghost. Fair enough. Take My Hand as a 4 star. This one actually enraged me because once I finished reading it, I found out that it's loosely based on true events, and that made me mad. Pretty much it's about this nurse who has 2 patients who are minors. They're 11, they're 13, and they get medically sterilized without really having any knowledge what that means. Their guardians don't read, and so when they were given the contract the nurse told them they had to sign, they couldn't understand what was being done. And it's pretty much like the story of like this nurse fighting for them. And when I found out it was based off a true story, I was enraged. And even on like the Goodreads page for this book, it says like, and history repeats what we don't remember. And look what's happening now with women's rights to their own reproductive systems in some places. Mayor of Maxwell Street is a 3.75. I do want to start off by saying this is by a debut author, which is incredible because this woman is so talented. However, a little bit long for my liking. A little bit long for my liking. I did feel like some parts dragged. I feel like it could have been like at least 100 pages shorter and it would have been great. This book was like almost 500 pages, and pretty much this is about like a woman who comes from a very wealthy family, and she's also kind of like an underground investigative journalist. Her family doesn't know that she does it, and pretty much she's kind of like working on this like big bad mafia man, the mayor of Maxwell Street. And essentially the problem with this is that I loved the mystery aspect, but I could not root for the romance or really get behind it. It kind of didn't sit well with me at times. I wasn't a big fan, and so whenever she was focusing on the romance, I was like, mystery, let's go. And I feel like that was kind of what dragged for me and brought it down a little bit, but I did love this author's writing. Anything she writes in the future I will gladly read, and I still enjoyed it. I gave Wayward a 4.25 star. This is another story told between like 3 different POVs and 3 different like women's lives and their experiences. And I just always say like at its heart, this book is a book about women's relationships and our connections. And it's very beautiful. I loved the ending, like kind of how everything played out. It's a nice short one. I think it's like just over 300 pages. And I just loved my time with this one. I love the little reference now that I get it, and it's a good time. Then I finished off City of Heavenly Fire. I don't know what I think about this one still. I think it's at least a 4.5. I think it's a 4.5. That's what I'm kind of sitting at. I'm not gonna lie, like throughout the whole book I was kind of like 4.25. Like I was loving it, but like it wasn't like wowing me at all. And then the last, like I'd literally say like 100 pages just destroyed me. I was reading this like crying on my bed. Not well. It's fine. Like the very end made me happy cry. There's that at least. But like I just can't believe I'm done with these characters now and the moral instruments is done. But now I get to dive into the dark artifices, which I'm really excited about. So we'll see how that goes for me. I read Just for Summer by Abby Jimenez. It's actually the arc I have of her new book coming out in April. And oh my god. 5 stars. 5 stars easy. This book I feel like just hit me in my soul. Just hit me. Pretty much both the main characters are kind of like the person known for being the last person somebody dates before they find their happily ever after. So they come up with this like genius plan to date each other for like a couple weeks to then break up and then meet their person. Sounds kind of childish, but it actually was so much fun. One thing I say Abby Jimenez does so well is that she makes such complex and lovable characters in the sense that both these characters had so much going on in their personal lives outside of this relationship, and just seeing like how they dealt with that and how they communicated those things that were happening to them was amazing. What our female main character was going through made me feel so seen, and some of the quotes that came out of that book I just are gonna stick with me like forever probably. Daughter of Norwoods was a 4-star for me. I'm really happy I dove into this series, and one thing I always say about Krista Broadbent's writing is this woman makes fantasy so easy to read and like so beginner friendly. I say she has kind of like a learn as you go approach where you go into this book and there's no intense world building. You are in like the action immediately. I'm pretty sure like we literally took off like literally here. This is like where like we were starting to fly. And she kind of makes it where like you learn about things as the character learns about things, if that makes sense. You guys like learn together, and it is just amazing writing. Like I love her writing so much. Lastly, I finally read Little Fires Everywhere. I think this is a 4-star. I think pretty much there's like this like perfect little town called Shaker Heights, and they kind of have like everything done to like a perfect status quo. Nobody breaks protocol, nobody does anything out of the ordinary, and then all of a sudden Mia moves in and starts kind of like not even shaking things up. People just don't like her there. People don't like her there, don't think she belongs there, and kind of go deep diving into her past to figure out why she's there and what brought her there. And I thought this was really fascinating. I still don't know how I feel about the ending, if I'm being 100% honest, but I think it's a 4-star to a 4.25. I'm not 100% sure. Friends, if I'm being 100% honest, I'm looking at all these books on the floor. I don't think I can pick them back up, but that was all the books I read in the month of February. So the original challenge was reading 29 books in 29 days, and I ended up reading 30 books in 29 days. So much for watching today's video. If you guys like it, please don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. It helps the channel out so much. Also TikTok Angel's Book Corner, and I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye.